Story 1: The Abandoned Warehouse. I was patrolling the quiet streets of our small town when the dispatch call came in, a possible break-in at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts. Alone in my cruiser, I made my way to the location, adrenaline coursing through me as I gripped my flashlight and radio. The warehouse was a colossal, derelict structure, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. It was rumored to be haunted, a place where no one dared to venture after dark. I cautiously entered, my flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The echoing sound of my footsteps sent shivers down my spine, and I felt a growing sense of unease. As I ventured deeper into the warehouse, I noticed something odd, a trail of fresh footprints leading further in. My heart raced as I followed the prints, my flashlight illuminating a gruesome scene. There in the dim light, I saw them, strange, twisted figures, their bodies contorted and inhuman. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their mouths stretched into grotesque smiles. Panic surged through me, and I raised my radio to call for backup. But before I could speak, one of the figures lunged at me, its cold, clammy hands wrapping around my throat. I struggled to break free, gasping for breath, but the figure's grip was unrelenting. I could see the malevolence in its glowing eyes, the hunger in its twisted smile. With a final surge of strength, I managed to break free and flee from the warehouse. I stumbled out into the night, my heart pounding, my body covered in cold sweat. The backup arrived, but when we returned to the warehouse, it was empty. The figures gone without a trace. I could hardly believe what had happened, and to this day, the memory of that night haunts me. A reminder that some encounters with the unknown can shatter the boundaries of reality. Story 2: The Vanishing House. It was a foggy, moonless night when I received a distress call, a report of strange occurrences at an old, dilapidated house on the outskirts of town. I arrived at the scene, my flashlight cutting through the thick fog that hung in the air. The house was a decrepit, decaying structure, its windows shattered, and its walls covered in ivy. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of my own footsteps as I cautiously approached. As I entered the house, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The walls seemed to close in around me, and the air grew colder with each step. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I began to explore the house, my flashlight revealing rooms filled with dusty furniture and broken glass. But as I ventured deeper, I noticed something unsettling. The rooms seemed to shift and change, the layout of the house warping before my eyes. Panic surged through me as I realized I was trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth. The walls moved, the doors disappeared, and the rooms seemed to stretch endlessly. In the darkness, I heard whispers, soft and chilling, voices from another realm. They spoke of the house's dark history, of the souls trapped within its walls. Desperate to escape, I tried to retrace my steps, but the house seemed determined to keep me captive. It was as if the very structure itself was alive, a malevolent entity that reveled in my fear. Hours passed, or perhaps it was days, I couldn't tell. I stumbled through the shifting corridors, my sanity slipping away. Just when I had given up hope, the fog outside began to lift, and the house slowly returned to its normal state. I stumbled out into the dawn, my body battered and my mind shattered. The other officers found me, but when we returned to the house, it was just an ordinary abandoned structure. No one believed my story, and I was labeled as unstable. But the memory of that night still haunts me, a reminder that sometimes the line between reality and the supernatural can blur in the most disturbing ways. Story 3: The Haunting of Greenfield Manor. heard the rumors about Greenfield Manor, an imposing, centuries-old mansion nestled in the heart of the countryside. People said it was haunted, that strange, otherworldly occurrences took place within its walls. But as a rookie cop, I was eager to prove myself, so when I received a call about a disturbance at the manor, I didn't hesitate to respond. As I approached the mansion, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The moon cast an eerie glow on the ivy-covered walls, and the air was heavy with an unnatural silence. I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in a world that didn't belong to the living. I cautiously entered the manor, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The walls seemed to close in around me, and the silence was oppressive. I began to explore the mansion, my heart pounding with each step. As I climbed the grand staircase, I heard it, a soft, mournful wail, like the cry of a lost soul. It echoed through the halls, sending shivers down my spine. I followed the sound, my flashlight beam leading the way. It led me to a room at the end of a long, dimly lit corridor. The door stood ajar, and as I pushed it open, I was met with a scene from a nightmare. The room was filled with ghostly apparitions, their faces contorted in anguish. They moved about, their movements slow and deliberate, as if trapped in a never-ending torment. Their eyes, vacant and empty, stared through me. I stumbled back, my heart racing, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me in the room with the restless spirits. They began to approach, their ethereal hands reaching out, their voices a haunting chorus of lamentation. Desperation overtook me as I tried to escape, but the room seemed to defy the laws of reality. The walls closed in around me, and the apparitions drew nearer, their touch cold and insistent. Just when I thought all hope was lost, a brilliant light filled the room, and the spirits vanished, leaving behind only an eerie silence. The door swung open, and I stumbled out into the corridor. The other officers arrived, but when we returned to the room, it was empty, the apparitions gone without a trace. No one believed my story, and I was ridiculed by my fellow officers. But the memory of that night at Greenfield Manor still haunts me, a reminder that sometimes the supernatural can defy explanation, and the line between the living and the dead can blur in the most unsettling ways.